Dinesh D'Souza has a new movie coming out. It's called Death of a Nation. He'll be with us in about 10 minutes, too. And not since 1860 have the Democrats so fanatically refused to accept the result of a free election. That year, their target was Abraham Lincoln. Now their target is President Trump and his supporters. From best-selling author Dinesh D'Souza, award-winning producer Gerald Molan, comes their latest film, Death of a Nation, with stunning historical recreations and a searching examination of fascism and white supremacy. The film cuts through progressive lies to expose hidden history and explosive truths. Lincoln united his party and saved America from the Democrats the first time. Can Trump and we come together and save America for the second time? Well, Death of a Nation, now playing in theaters nationwide, rated PG-13, may be inappropriate for children under 13. Learn more at deathofanationmovie.com, deathofanationmovie.com. Did it already start, Mr. Producer? It starts today, right now, Friday. So you might want to check it out. Now is a great weekend to go. And you know what? I'll see it this weekend, too, as a matter of fact. I love Dinesh D'Souza movies. Very, very much. They're really good movies. They're very well done. Dinesh D'Souza's brand new movie is out right now as I speak. Tonight's the night to go. Death of a Nation. How are you, sir?
Great to be on the show, Mark. A pleasure.
It's my pleasure. Tell us the guts of this movie, because I'm certainly sympathetic with what this says here that I'm reading.
Basically, the movie examines two big ideas. The first one is racism or white supremacy, and the second is fascism. Ever since the 2016 election, the left has been flinging these charges at Trump and at the right. The basic idea here is that Trump is a fascist, Trump is a racist, and the point of all this is to basically say that even though Trump may have won the election democratically and gotten an electoral majority, he doesn't have any legitimacy. He doesn't even deserve to be the president because he's kind of like Hitler in 1933. Now, what I do in the movie is I take you into a kind of deep dive, both into the history of racism and fascism, to tell you what those things mean, who committed the horrific racial crimes of the 20th century, and in the case of slavery, the 19th century, and then I bring you right up to the present, and I ask the kind of crushing question, where are the racists and the fascists now? That's the theme of the movie.
It's amazing, isn't it, that the Democrat Party's been able to whitewash its history?
Well, the reason they could do this, Mark, is because they dominate academia, the media, and Hollywood. And when you have all those three big megaphones, you can put out a lot of big lies. And even if you or I know differently, we don't have as big a megaphone to contradict them. And so they've been putting this stuff in the classrooms, on the History Channel, in NPR, in Michael Moore's documentaries. And when young people get this from all different directions, they think it has to be true. How else could I be finding out about it from so many different quarters? But it's the same progressive narrative, and it leaves out inconvenient facts, and it's spun to serve progressive ideological ends.
You know, I had Shelby Steele on my Fox program a couple of weeks ago, and he said, oppression is over. Oppression is over. Slavery is over. Segregation is over. Freedom. And he says people are having a difficult time dealing with liberty, with freedom. And so what do? They complain about the system. They complain. They try and drag history into it and so forth and so on. That's taking place too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Now, I agree with Shelby Steele as far as the government is concerned and the laws. We certainly have equal rights under the laws, and that is a wonderful thing. But I would say that the Democratic Party, the way it has organized itself, it has established a kind of new type of ethnic plantation today. It's obviously not the old slave plantation, but what it is what I call multicultural or multiracial plantations. They've got ghettos for the blacks and barrios for the Latinos and reservations for the Native Americans, and all those places are markedly similar. You have dilapidated housing and broken families and a high degree of violence and a sense of intergenerational dependency, and no one gets ahead, and there's nihilism and despair. And amazingly, all these places are administered by the Democratic Party, and they deliver 90% of their votes to the Democratic Party. So I think that if you're looking someplace for institutional racism, there it is.
I think he'd agree with most of that. Let me ask you something. Your ancestry is Indian. You and you write, brilliantly about the issues of race in this country, the history of race in this country. What really has motivated you to jump into this with 2 feet?
Well, I think I was 17 years old when I first came to America. I had $500 in my pocket, and I was coming to a new country as an exchange student. What I saw in America literally amazed me. The kind of country this is, the abundance of life that this country provides to the ordinary guy. The rich guy lives well anywhere in the world, but a country is judged by what kind of prospects, what kind of chance it offers to the ordinary fellow to climb up the ladder of success. I also realized that I can do things with my life in this country. I can be the architect of my own destiny and write the script of my own life in a way that would really be unimaginable in India and very difficult even in most other places in the world. So my politics is really based on that. It's based upon defending the idea of America and the ladders of opportunity that enable a brown-skinned guy like me with nothing to his name to be able to better his life and be in the driver's seat of his own life.
Beautifully put. Now, you say we're on this collision course, really this new civil war we're headed for. Explain that.
Well, what's going on here is that the Democrats have essentially adopted fascist tactics while blaming fascism on Trump and on the right. Now remember, fascism has always been a phenomenon of the left. Mussolini was a socialist. Hitler's party was the National Socialist Party. If you just read through the Nazi 25-point platform, which is what the Nazis campaigned on, you'll see state control of banks, state control of insurance companies, state control of education, state control of healthcare, state control of religious liberty, and down and down it goes. Now, this is not a conservative or right-wing agenda by any stretch of the imagination. Now, amazingly, the reason that the left is able to get away with what it does is it looks at things like Charlottesville, the Charlottesville rally. Now, that was a tragedy. A person got killed and got run over. But what I want to talk about for a moment is the Charlottesville narrative. And the Charlottesville narrative was, hey, look, there's white supremacy, and it's all on the right. These are right-wingers who are Trump supporters. Now, Mark, the explosive part of this movie and the accompanying book, Death of a Nation, is I blow this out of the water. I show that this is not true, that the organizer of the Charlottesville rally, Jason Kessler, is a left-winger. He was an Obama activist. He was an Occupy Wall Street guy, and the media knew about this because it was on the Southern Poverty Law Center website, but they decided not to go into it because it would be very inconvenient for their narrative. In the film itself, I interviewed the poster boy of white supremacy, Richard Spencer. Again, a guy routinely presented as a right-wing neo-Nazi, a right-wing white supremacist, but it becomes really obvious in the movie that this guy is not only not a right-winger, he's a left-winger, and one might even say a far left-winger. Because in the interview, I say to him, I go, you tell me, all men are created equal, true or false? He goes, false. I go, where do our rights come from? He goes, well, they don't come from God. I go, well, where do they come from? He goes, our rights come from the state. The state gives us our rights. So this guy turns out to be a statist, a collectivist. I ask him, what do you think of Reagan? He goes, he was a terrible president. I say, who are your favorite presidents? And he names one Democrat after the other. And so what we begin to realize is that we have been spun a narrative. The left has concocted the Charlottesville narrative for ideological ends. Ultimately, they're taking, if you will, the fascism on the left that they embody and foisting it on the right. And that's a big, big lie.
That is fascinating. Now, are you having any problems lining up theaters? That's always seems to be a little tough.
Mark, that's not a problem. The movie is in over 1,000 theaters. It opened today. We're excited to see how it does over the weekend. I mean, look, there's an article in yesterday's Washington Post. Dinesh claims that Hitler was a liberal Democrat. Now, the stupidity of this article is almost beyond description. I do not claim that Hitler was a liberal Democrat. I do show in the movie that the Nazis did lift some of their ideas, some of their bigoted and even murderous ideas. They were modeled on American progressives and on the Democratic Party. That's the crushing truth. But rather than face the truth, they can't refute it, so they create a straw man. Dinesh is saying that Hitler was a liberal Democrat because that can be then said to be prima facie absurd, so people don't need to see the movie. But they do need to see the movie because it's based on facts. The book has chapter and verse. And ultimately, I think if minorities see the movie, they will be not just walking away, they'll be running away from the Democratic Party.
Well, that's a key, isn't it? That's a key. If we can get to people who normally vote Democrat because they believe the Democrat Party is the party of their salvation, and they can really see the history of the party and where the party's taking them today, I think we'd make great progress. I think your movie could do that.
I think it can be a first step. Ultimately, I think, of course, Trump is the one who needs to you might say, break up the Democratic plantation. In other words, try to figure out a way to bring the kind of economic prosperity that so much of the rest of the country is enjoying into the inner cities and into the Latino barrios of South Texas and onto the native reservations, because given the choice between ladders of opportunity and the kind of rope of dependency that the left has to offer, I have no doubt that people would choose the latter, but they need to have the ladder in front of them.
Death of a Nation, it's in a lot of theaters. It's probably in a theater near you. I would strongly encourage you to see it tonight, see it this weekend. I'm going to. And I want to thank you for producing another great historic movie, Dinesh D'Souza.
Really appreciate it, Mark. If I may say, deathofanationmovie.com. You can actually put in your zip code and boom, it'll tell you the theaters that are playing right near you. So deathofanationmovie.com is how you find out where it's playing.
Excellent. We'll link to that. All right. Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much.
All right. Be well. Let's go ahead and put the book up there, Mr. Producer. And deathofanationmovie.com. Let's put that on our social sites so people can just go there, put their zip code in, he said, and find out where the movie is. I would strongly encourage you folks to check that out. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.